here at Furman, as you might imagine. All right, you can see the question on the board. What are the qualities and characteristics of a good play-by-play announcer? And the reason I thought I would delve into this is because I got an email from a young man at a college in the Midwest. It's in the Mid-American Conference. I won't tell you which one. But, and how he chose me, I'm sure he's reaching out to a number of people. But he sent me an email asking me if I would be willing to listen to some of his work and offer a critique. And I said, absolutely. I have always enjoyed trying to help young people in this business, whether they're in college or even in high school. If by nothing else, just providing them the platform to get on the air if possible, offering any kind of critique or answering any questions that they have. Because there have been people who have done it for me, and I've shared the story with you, I think, on a couple of different occasions about Marty Brennaman. And one of the reasons that I hold him in such high esteem is because there have been two specific incidents in my life that he played a major role in broadcasting-wise. Very briefly, I'll recap. The first one, I was 20 years old. This was 1987. I was the news and sports director of my hometown radio station. It's a 50,000-watt FM country station that was automated. So we would just record things to plug in their news, sports, weather, all of that. And then the 1,000-watt AM where we were spinning the adult contemporary hits, baby. Screaming 1,000 watts getting out around the block in Williamson, West Virginia, especially at night. But in any event, I was trying to convince the powers that be to let me try my hand at the talk show. And because of our affiliation with the Reds as a radio affiliate, I was able to get a hotel stay downtown at Carew Tower, which is the tallest building now, I think, in downtown Cincinnati. Old, very expensive hotel. I was able to get vouchers for a couple of nights stay, and when I told them that, they said, well, if it doesn't cost us anything, go ahead. I got a press credential. It's the first press credential I ever had for anything other than a high school sporting event. And I was going to go there, and I was going to do interviews, and I was going to come back with a whole bunch of material, and I was going to wow them with this great information I was going to put out on this talk show. So the time comes, I get to then Riverfront Stadium. It is a Saturday game. It is actually a game of the week. Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola were still doing the game of the week on NBC. So it was a day game. And I got to the ballpark 4 hours ahead of time because I was just excited and couldn't sleep and all those other things. I got into the stadium, and I'm just standing there on the field. My credential allowed me to go anywhere I wanted to go that the press was allowed. At one juncture later, I ventured into the locker room and actually just stepped in and stood there for a few moments. And for a guy who grew up with the Big Red Machine, at that time, Tony Perez was on staff as a coach. Dave Concepcion was still an active player late in his career. Those guys were there. Dave Parker was a member of the Reds team at that time, and Buddy Bell, and I mean, there were just so many of those names. But to see Perez and Concepcion as a 20-year-old who grew up with the Big Red Machine, that was a big moment. I just stood there. They probably wondered, who is this kid and what in the world's wrong with him? Then I left, and so I went out, and batting practice was underway later on, and it dawned on me that I have no idea what I'm doing. None. I had never been in this situation before. I did not know anybody. I did not know the protocol about when to talk to people, where to talk to them, all the things now that are routine wherever you go, collegiately, professional sports. It's all the things that are part of the routine job now. That was the first time and I was scared silly. And all these things are going through my mind. Oh, my God, I'm going back. There's not going to be any interviews. I'm not going to have any information. They're going to fire me. They're going to think I came down here just to party for the weekend, and I'm going to have to go to work in the coal mines, which is a whole other issue because of my family. So I'm terrified. I really am. I'm completely out of my element at that time, as much as I'm in it now, completely out of my element. So I'm standing way back over by the backstop, just to the first base dugout would have been just to my right. So I'm standing back on the warning track. And I happened to look at the batting cage, and lo and behold, there was Marty Brennaman. And I recognized him. And I've told this story in public before. It's funnier when I can actually do it standing up. But have you ever tried to get close to somebody without them knowing that you're getting close to them? So, I would take a step, and then I would stop. And I'd look around like I knew what I was doing. Then I would take another couple of steps, and then I would stop. And repeated the process until I was on the fringe of the conversation. Excuse me. And as he wrapped up the conversation he was having with whoever this was, I don't remember, he turned and started to walk past me, and I summoned up every bit of courage that I had, and I stuck out my hand, and in my best voice, I said, "Mr. Brennaman." I was so nervous. It was just ridiculous. And I explained to him who I was, where I was from, how much I admired his work, why I was there, and was just brutally honest. I had no idea what I was doing. And at that moment, at that very moment, I didn't realize it at the time, and I'm sure he didn't realize it. But at that very moment, Marty Brennaman had my career in his hand. Because had he been a jerk, which many people in this profession are, and I've come across them down the road as I've gotten older, and you just learn to deal with it. But at that particular time, had he been a jerk and said, "You know what, I don't have time to mess with you," or even if he had said, "I'd love to, but I can't, I got to get to work," it would have devastated me. It really would have devastated me. And I probably would have quit when I got back. But he didn't do that. He took about 10 minutes with me on the field, and he said things like, "Okay, here's where you go do the interviews. Here's when you can, wait until their round of batting practice is done. You can go into the locker room when they go back in there up until a certain point. And since you've never done this before, here are some people that I would talk to, and here are some players I would stay away from." He gave me a crash course in about 10 minutes right there on the field. And then, after it was all said and done, he allowed me to come and sit in the booth. It was a 2-level booth, and I got to sit in the booth behind him and watch he and Joe Nuxall work and call that game that day. And it was, at that juncture, easily the highlight of my life. And to this day, it remains one of those moments that I will never, ever forget. Because he could have brushed me off. It would have completely destroyed me. But he didn't. He took time to talk with me, to put me at ease, and to help me. And because of that experience, as I got older and began to realize exactly what he did for me, I then made it a point that no matter how good or bad I may be, no matter how big of a market or small of a market I might work in, if anybody ever asks me for help, I'm going to give it to them. And that being the case, I've tried to live by that ever since then. And I've never forgotten that. That's one of the lessons that I was taught. And the other lesson in that is you never know the impact you're making on someone just by a simple gesture or just by maybe a moment where you are caught up in something and you can't give them the time, you don't know the impact that you might make on that person. So it's a lesson that I've tried to remember over my career. And then when I finally, at age 37, got a chance to do baseball play-by-play starting in 2005 at Clemson, after that first season was over, I called him and asked him if he would listen to some of my work and critique it for me, because I'd never done it before. This was my first time. And he said, absolutely, send it to me. So I sent him the CD, and like 3 days later, I was driving somewhere, and he called me. And we spent about 20 minutes on the phone, and, he told me several very constructive things, really encouraged me, because he said, you do have some talent, and as far as the play-by-play goes, it was fine. Here are some things you can do to make it better. And, here are some things not to do. It was another very, very important conversation. And so to this day, as I told somebody the other day, I don't worry anymore. I used to obsess over it, because we all had these dreams, I guess, about wanting to climb that ladder and make it to the big time. I used to obsess over what people thought about my work. Now I don't. I won't say I don't care, because I do care. I want to present a product that people enjoy. But I don't obsess over it anymore. I approach it from the standpoint that I'm happy doing what I love, and I have fun doing it. And as long as I can operate under those parameters, I'm satisfied. And if the call never comes to go any further than where I am, then that's fine. I'm not actively searching for anything. I love it here at Furman. So if somebody wants me to do something, they're going to have to call me. And at 50 years old, or I'll be 50 in 8 days, the opportunities are dwindling rapidly, especially in the media world that we live in now. But as long as I'm happy, as long as I'm having fun, those are really the only things I care about. I'll let everybody else worry about whether it's any good or not. But the other thing that goes along with that, those lessons that I learned, if somebody asks you for help, always be willing to help.